A reading from the book of Isaiah. Read, hear what God's Spirit is saying to you. Thus says the Lord, who makes a way in the sea, a path in the mighty waters, who brings out chariot and horse, army and warrior. They lie down, they cannot rise. They are extinguished, quenched like a wick. Do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. I am about ready to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. The wild animals will honor me, the jackals and the ostriches. For I give water in the wilderness, rivers in the desert, to give drink to my chosen people, the people whom I formed for myself, so they might declare my praise. Here ends the reading of words that give us insight on God. May God grant us wisdom and courage for interpretation.
Well, friends, today is the last day of 2023, and I thought that it might be fun to say goodbye to 2023 by writing a few thank you notes in the style of Jimmy Fallon from The Tonight Show. If you'll be patient with me for just a moment as I write some thank you notes, I want to knock these out before the year ends. Thank you, New Year's Eve, for helping us realize how old we are when we fall asleep in our chairs at 8 p.m. How many of you think you're going to make it till midnight tonight? Oh, I see one hand up here in the front row that definitely is not going to make it until midnight. Some of you are. We'll see. I'll probably fall asleep at 6. I won't even make it till 8. Thank you, Netflix Fake Countdown to Midnight, for helping me lie to my kids about the time so that they'll just go to bed. So if you don't have parents, or if you're not parents, you don't have little kids, you don't know the magic of this. But kids want to wait up until midnight, and if you have this Netflix countdown, you can tell them it's midnight even if it's 6:30. They get to experience the countdown and all that. Thank you, 2023, for being the year with all the Riz. Do you all know that word, Riz? 1? Anyone else? 2? This is the 2023 word of the year. You should know this. Oxford English Dictionary named Riz the word of the year. Tom Holland coined it. It's short for charisma. I didn't have quite enough Riz to pull that off. Let's try another one. Thank you, Christmas decorations, for reminding us that the first thing we have to do in the new year is to clean our house. How many of you still have Christmas decorations up? Quite a few. If it weren't for my wife, we wouldn't have any Christmas decorations up, but she always makes sure we have them up. And she loves them. She likes to leave them up for as long as she can. Her record is leaving the Christmas tree up until May. So we'll see if we can beat that in 2024. Thank you, New Year's resolutions, for letting everyone know what we're going to give up on by this time next month. How many of you have made New Year's resolutions? Some? Here's a question. How many of you have ever kept your New Year's resolution through the whole year? 1. That's pretty consistent, maybe, with the average. I think 9% of people keep their New Year's resolutions. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Thank you for letting me write a few thank you notes. I appreciate that. I wanted to say goodbye to 2023. You know, there's something interesting about New Year's. I mean, nothing really changes, right? It's just the change of a date on a calendar. There's nothing really substantial that changes, and yet There is something about standing kind of on the precipice, kind of being like the Roman god Janus, with one head looking back to the past and one looking forward to the future, recognizing that this is a unique moment where we give thanks for those things that have gone well, we recognize the things that have been kind of mediocre, and we let go of those things that have really been bad in our lives. And so I think that it's an interesting time where we as human beings kind of need a liminal space. We kind of need an opportunity to let go of things and to embrace that which is new. And there's something freeing about knowing that you're going into a new year. And I've kind of come to the point where I kind of like changing over that page in the calendar, or let's be honest, flipping the little screen on my iPhone, where I get rid of 2023 and move into 2024, because it is filled with new possibilities, new things to embrace. I love the thought of all these new possibilities, and maybe that's why I like this verse from Isaiah. The context for this is that the ancient Israelites have been through a horrific period of time. They've been conquered by the Assyrians, and then they've been conquered by the Babylonians. And the Babylonians came in, and they did something despicable. They tore down the temple. And look, it wasn't just like a place where they went once a week and worshiped. The temple was the place where they thought that God literally lived. Like God was in there. God was tied to that place. In fact, in the ancient world, I don't know if you know this or not, but they thought that gods were tied to specific dirt. And so they thought that God was in there. And so when the Babylonians came through and they destroyed the temple, it wasn't just that the ancient Israelites had been defeated. It was like their God had been destroyed. Moreover, the Babylonians came in to Jerusalem, and they took out all the leaders, and they deported them to Babylon. This is a period of time known as the exile. And they made them stay there for decades. And so, after several decades, they were finally allowed to return home. And of course, the place that they had known and loved was not the same. They had to completely rebuild their lives, their community, and even their faith to meet with new realities. And it is in that context that we hear today's scripture. Do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. Behold, I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Can you not perceive it? You hear how wonderfully hopeful those words are in the midst of something that seemed completely unhopeful, like people's lives were in complete despair. And yet, it is a reminder that God is at work in the world doing new things, that God is constantly a source of new creation. In the United Church of Christ, we have a saying that we like to use, that God is still speaking. That God didn't just speak things and then stop. That God didn't just create and then stop participating in the world, but that God is just as much a part of the world today as God has always been. And that God is at work doing things in the world. Now look, I'm not one who thinks that God has everything planned out for us or that God controls our lives. But I am one that thinks that God is active in our lives, that God is active in our world, and that if we allow ourselves to open up to what God is doing, that we can be a part of what God is doing in the world. We can become co-creators with God. You ever heard that expression before? Becoming co-creators with God? What that means is that we're not depending just on God to do it all. That we're not expecting God to create everything in our lives and in our world, but that we become co-creators with God, that we are attuned to what God is doing in the world and try to help make it manifest. And friends, I think that that is how God so often works in the world. through us partnering with God to make this world a better place, to make our lives better. And so I think the new year is a great opportunity for us to embrace that responsibility, to be ready to listen to what God is saying in this new time, to listen to what God is wanting us to do in this new time. I think one way that we can embrace the new is by being ready to be in full community with one another. So I'd like to teach you a new theological term. You ready for this? Now, if you go and you look through the ancient church theologians, you're not going to find this term, but I like it and I want you to know it. It's embracing the bod. Do you like that? Embracing the bod? I'm not talking about your bod necessarily, although it's good to embrace your body as it is, you know. But I mean bod as an acronym. You ready for this? The benefit of the doubt. T's not included in that because the is an article and it's unnecessary, and because my acronym doesn't work with it. Okay? Embracing the bod, benefit of the doubt. You know, so many times when I see relationships fall apart, so many times when I see people being angry and upset with each other, often what it has to do with is assumptions. Assumptions about people's intentions, assumptions about what people have or haven't done. And one of the most theologically adept things that we can do in our lives is to extend people the benefit of the doubt. To assume that people have the best intentions, to assume that people are trying their best with the circumstances that they have. I'm not saying that we should be naive. I'm not saying that we should let people take advantage of us. But what I'm saying is that in general interactions and general relationships, what we ought to do is give each other a little grace, to extend each other a little compassion, to extend the benefit of the doubt. And I'm telling you that that's not so much for the benefit of other people as it is for the benefit of ourselves. That if we don't hang on to bitterness, if we don't hang on to resentment, that is good for our souls, and it helps us to go out and live more fulfilling and fulfilled lives. So this new year, I asked you, what new things is God doing in your life? What new things is God calling you to be a part of in the world? What new things are you going to embrace? Do not consider the former things, or remember the things of old. God is doing a new thing in your life, in the world. May we be a part of it. May we be co-creators with God. May it be so. Thanks be to God. And friends, Happy New Year!